Alright, tell me if I can be heard. Because I think I should be able to be heard now.
Hopefully. Looks like the chat
Alright,
says you're good.
confirmed.
Alright. You're
We're
great.
in. We're in.
Fantastic.
Alright, I think I should be able to be heard now. So,
And that's how the old man found his hat.
you guys missed a ridiculously amazing story. Welcome back to Coach's Corner, where we learn how to unmute our mic on stream. I'm going to just restart this and say welcome to Coach's Corner, where we learn how to stun our opponents on solo queue. With us here today is Ziani on a crazy good Twisted Fate game where we learn how to control the map with global ultimates. Also, we are hosted by Summoner School Events, and I want to give a quick shout out to them, even though I just said this, but you couldn't hear me. So, Summoner School Events, if the mods could link the sign-up sheet in chat now, that would be great. They are starting their stream, they're starting their program up in the next week, and their first stream will be this Thursday, where I think at 7 p.m. EDT, and our show will be directly following that at 9, so make sure to check them out. And if you'd like to be a part of the program, definitely look up the chat look at the chat and sign up on Reddit. I can be heard now, so we can start the show.
Alright. I'm having a serious case of deja vu here.
Me too, because I said this all, you wouldn't know, but now twice. So, Ziani, welcome to the show. I'm glad you can be
Charlie.
heard.
Thank you.
Let's jump into this before, anything else crazy happens, shall we?
Hopefully your replay client doesn't break as well.
Oh, yes, probably will, because such a great replay client we use. Alright, I am currently in game. Are you ready to start this up?
Yeah, I'm ready to play.
Alright, let's play this baby on ×1, starting now.
Alright.
Alright, so as
yeah,
we usually do, I'm just going to have you start off with the Runes and Masteries and the current matchup, and then we'll get right back into the content.
Alright, so for the current matchup, we're playing versus Karthus mid lane with Flash Exhaust. We are running Flash Teleport, more emphasis on map pressure than actual kill potential, which can be done for both, since Karthus is a pretty easy lane for Twisted Fate. For Runes and Masteries, we're running we're running Magic Pen Marks. We've got scaling HP Seals, and then we've got scaling AP Glyphs as well as AP Quints. Normally the standard is scaling CDR with move speed Quints, but this is actually on a D1 Smurf, so I don't have those runes available. So we'll just be making do with the runes I said earlier. And then for Masteries, for running 2109, picking up the points into the move speed, since we don't actually have the move speed Quints. We'll also be getting upgraded Biscuits, as well as the cooldown reduction on our Summoner spells, which helps out a lot on Twisted Fate. So basically, for this matchup, Charlie.
Yes, please tell me. I didn't have the game up as well. I just decided to have as many things go wrong as possible. But now it's up, so continue to speak.
Fantastic. Alright, for the Karthus vs TF matchup, there's a lot of emphasis on move speed in this matchup because we want to dodge as many Skittles as possible in that lane. Because the Q does quite a bit of damage, especially when you're solo targeted, it'll do double damage. Twisted Fate is very good at poking down enemy mid laners that are forced to come into range for the last hits. So our basic priority here will be landing the red card or the blue card onto Karthus as well as the wave, so we can get an early level 2 and maybe pressure him a little bit.
Alright, so let's transition that into laning phase, especially as Twisted Fate here. Your early levels, talk to me about those, and sort of what you're thinking about doing here. I know you mentioned a little bit about pressuring with the blue card and the red card. And then after that, just talk to me a little bit as well about sort of the summoner spells you're running and just this utility-based Twisted Fate mentality with these global ults that we're going to be seeing so much of this game.
Alright, so that's a lot of information for me to handle at one period of time, but we'll begin with the laning phase area of this. So we have the D ring instead of the boots, so we do have a little bit more AP than usual, especially with the AP glyphs that we're running. So early level 1, we're just going to be using W to poke them down as well as the wave for that level 2. And the big thing about Twisted Fate is that if you don't have level 2, you don't really have much attack speed to farm or pressure the enemy lane with. Especially because Stack Deck gives you passive attack speed as well as a stacking pretty much damage source. So a lot of times I'll pick that up second and then use that to start trading with the enemy mid lane. So usually at level 1 you'll just be poking, and that's basically about it. And after that you'll just start pushing in the wave and try to get as much damage onto the enemy Linator as possible, and then you'll back sooner or later to pick up your first items, especially since you have that teleport.
Yeah, and we're going to see here, Elise is going to go for the gank, and one of Karthus's big downfalls is he doesn't have a ton of mobility here. You're going to land that gold card into an easy cocoon, into an easy first blood.
Yeah.
You don't end up taking the kill, but good $200 worth of change in your pocket there. So
Dollar bill, y'all.
exactly, I could have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead here and see you, I think you actually push one more wave. No.
Yeah, so I originally wanted to back here because we already had the lane pushed in and we were already denying CS. However, I was actually about 100 gold away from Lucidity Boots' first item, so I decided to stay for another wave here.
So let's talk about that, actually. Let's talk about Lucidity Boots' first item, logic behind that.
Well, Lucidity Boots are pretty common first item because they offer a lot of CDR, which does really well with TF's Q and W, which scale pretty well on CDR. So the big reason you pick up CDR early is because you can push in the enemy lane extremely well with that, and also gives you more opportunities to back early on when you're running that teleport. But also because you don't actually build a lot of CDR in TF's main kit. Your first item will usually be Lichbane, Ludens, Zhonya's, depending on the lane, and you'll lose a lot on that. And we're not actually running CDR this game.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, not running CDR this game in terms of Runes of Masteries, you won't have too much of that in terms of your core build, so a cheap, easy way of getting CDR which benefits your W and your Q pretty heavily.
Yes.
Alright.
That and your ult, which
Of course,
is
yes.
pretty core
Yes.
on Twisted Fate.
So, as you're approaching level 6 here, and you're thinking about, what you're going to be doing with that in terms of your global presence, I did forget to mention, there is a certain particular man in this match, the Poppy Top. He goes by a little nickname of Wings of Death, and he's actually, he stays pretty true to that in this game, dying quite a lot. With a good helping hand from Ziani here. So,
Yeah.
talk to me here. You're level 5. You've pushed him to tower. You're about to be level 6. You dodge. Okay. By the way, this game, Ziani put on some dancing shoes because I just want you guys to notice how many skill shots this kid decides to dodge this game because it's pretty hilarious. And in fact, they were calling you a scripter this game, correct?
In all chat,
In
yeah.
all chat, yeah.
But he was just being salty, so I'm not actually a scripter, guys. Please, no report arena.
But anyway, let's transition that. You're about to be level 6, so talk to me a little bit about what's going through your head now.
So the thought process for Twisted Fate is you have a lot of global pressure on the map, and you want to be a huge threat. That's partially the reason you pick up a lot of CDR, so you can push in that lane early, so you're always missing, and enemy team tries to accommodate for you. So whenever you hit 6, you're going to start looking for opportunities to punish the enemy team. That's a lot of what TF does, is punishing people for overextending or improperly using cooldowns at a pretty much good time for me. So at this point, I'll be pushing in the wave, and then I'll be walking around looking for an opportunity around the map. So right now, bot lane's pushed in, top lane's pushed in. Both are pretty much good ways to gank. So basically, we're going to push this in, and then hopefully get down to doing some actual business.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think you back here and pick up home guards.
Yes, and then I really like the home guards, even though it doesn't really offer a lot in terms of DPS early, but home guards really helps you get the lane faster, and also does pretty sick plays with teleport early on.
And we're about to see just how sick those plays can be as you sort of make a sick play here that turns out into an extended fight. But talk to me a little bit about coming up here to kill Wings of Dialot.
Alright, so originally I wanted to counter the gank, but they backed up early because I thought they were going to dive, so pretty much just stayed up here. Karthus had backed as well, so there's really no reason not to be up here. My lane's pretty even. Wings of Death doesn't actually run Flash this game, so he's very easy gank for me. And basically all I need to do for Garen is set up a gold card, and then I'm going to pretty much pick up a free kill.
Now we're dealing with actually 2 mid laners that have global ultimates, so we're going to see Ziani eke out this Karthus just a little bit in terms of map pressure, but here we can see that you're doing another little dance here, dodging pretty much every skill shot as you go ahead and escape this sort of interesting situation you've got yourself into. Yeah, not quite picking up that Lee Sin kill, but...
Yeah, I should have stayed there in the bush and put a ward over the wall, and I think I would pick them up right there, but it was the safe call to back up. And let's see Elise actually come in here.
Shit. So, as we see you recalling now and heading back to lane with your extremely fast speed, I want you to talk a little bit about just some proper times to use your ultimate. So, for example...
Right here, yeah. So, as I said earlier, you want to use your ult to punish enemy players. So, basically what they did there, they did a like tier 2 dive, and they got punished for that because they had already used all their disengaged. Both flashes were down, and there was no way they could get away from the gold card. And it really helps a lot when you first down boots because, let's be honest, I don't think you can outrun a Twisted Fate with gold card and boots, who's also building CDR.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really interesting point. You know, you do lack the damage items. However, when using your global presence, you're usually looking, as we see another pretty easy pickup here on the Karthus, but you're usually looking to either counter gank or just have power in numbers, so it's not as much about getting that damage off as it is about getting that hard CC, that gold card off to set up those kills. So, especially early on in the game, we can see there's only 2 tier 1 boots on the enemy team, and then the rest of the team doesn't even have boots, while you're sitting at tier 2 boots.
Tier 3.
Tier 3, rather, yeah. But in terms of overall speed. So that's just something to keep in mind in terms of when, at least specifically playing Twisted Fate, you get that early movement speed bonus to really be able to get those gold cards off. And I also just want to ask as well, is like, is there... You know, are there any like key instances that would sort of warrant an immediate use of your ultimate, or is there any? I know you're talking about a little bit earlier in terms of you know, seeing someone using improper cooldown or things like that as you keep your dancing shoes on here.
Well, for the most part, ult you usually want to hang on to just for the pressure that it has on the map, because a lot of players will try and play around it. So for the most part, doing your job is pushing in early and denying CS does a lot for your team. And if an enemy player decides that they want to take a little bit more from their lane, you'll just hop down there. The prime moments you actually want to use your ult is, one, for counter ganking, because you can turn around fights very easily for the most part, because they'll be overextending in the lane trying to get onto your lane. So one is counter ganking. The second one is just actually ganking yourself when players are dueling or brawling in the top or the bottom. You can come in and just wipe them up. And then the third is a very, very ridiculous version of rotation where you just teleport to a tower or a lane and you just push it. Which isn't really falling in the realm of ganking or anything like that.
True, but, you know, some can have its situational uses. So, in about 30 seconds here, we're actually going to see you head to the bot lane with one of your global presences again. But can you talk to me a little bit quickly about... you know, you're continuing... Oh my gosh, we're going to just skip over that. We're not... You definitely didn't just teleport in here and completely tunnel and die, but let's skip over that part. But can you quickly talk to me about shoving in the lane? You can also talk to me a little bit after this play happens in a minute here, but just the idea of that shoving in your lane and sort of what that does to help open up the map for you and the effect that that might have on the enemy laner.
So the ideal situation for Twisted Fate, as usual, is that you want to pretty much build pressure on the map. When you're pressuring that mid lane by pushing it in, you build up a lot of, well, as we speak, Stormy's just going to come in here and then we'll pick up some kills in the bot lane using that teleport. But the thing about TF pressure on the map is that it really has a lot of power in that early game. So when you push in that lane, other people will be scared to push out, and then it'll also give you a lot of room on the map to do whatever you want, because they won't be able to get onto you as much.
Absolutely, and we see you coming down here to pick up a pretty easy double kill. We do see Elise holding mid lane, however, it still hasn't even pushed towards your tower because of the fact that you've been pushing him in so hard. And so, again, as you said, especially in the early game, it can be a pretty huge and powerful opportunity for you to just come down there, pick up a couple kills early, and, you know, it's not like you're down on CS either, because you're up almost 30 CS here as well. 20 CS, but yeah, you know, so now you're 4-1 and 2.
We've taken 2 towers on the map. We've gotten quite a bit of pressure on enemy lanes with just our teleport and our ults. So in general, we're in a really good spot because we basically set up our solo lanes for success here.
You set your solo lanes up for success.
Well, I mean, they did a lot in helping me,
True.
So
but
it's not like it's a solo process.
Either way, you know, that was, I think, an extremely prevalent and key example of just a very standard Twisted Fate gank, counter gank rather, to a gank that was happening in the bot lane, and just how that can help snowball winning or losing lane, just to, snowball that into the mid game, keep that map dominance, keep that map control. But yeah, so we're gonna see you head top here to pick on Wings of Dying a lot. I don't think a lot actually goes on up here, but do you want to talk to me a little bit as we sort of get into a little bit of a lull here about other uses for your ultimate, potentially using your ultimate for vision, even if that isn't the #1 use or the ideal use?
So for instance, here right now I ulted, and there was actually no way for me to get on there because there was 2 or 3 players around him. So basically, they put themselves in a position where they couldn't respond to this push here because they were trying to defend against the TF ult, so that gave us an opportunity to pick up this tower. But a lot of times, using your ult or vision will usually be around Baron or Dragon when you're looking to contest an objective, or when you just need it in the middle of a team fight. For instance, when you're playing versus a champion like Twisted Fate or Rengar, sorry, not Twisted Fate, Vayne or Rengar, you'll just pop that ult and you'll have vision of them. This can also work, say, in pretty much an area like this, where people are fighting over the wall. It'll give you vision of them, and you can respond to certain, say, situations like a Fiddlesticks ulting in from the side. So usually you'll want to pop that in the middle of the fight. You're not always bound to using your ult to, hop into the fight. A lot of times it can be used for that utility, which comes with the vision.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something too, I think, with either players that don't play a lot of Twisted Fate or are against, I guess, a good Twisted Fate, when you're playing that Vayne or when you're playing, as you said, like Fiddlesticks or things, it can be an amazing utility skill to make sure that you're not getting, Fiddlesticks ulted over a wall, or just completely countering that Vayne stealth mechanic in a team fight can just be the little extra oomph in that team fight to just have you snowball that fight and have it end up in an objective lead. We're gonna see you again get out of the gank here. I think you actually do end up dying at the end of this, but they wasted what? How many summoner spells?
They used 2 flashes there and 2 exhausts, but that was basically
and an ult, a couple ults, I think. So 4 summoner spells and a couple ults for good old Ziani's Twisted Fate mid. I do want to note a little bit. So you still have this CS advantage, and you can see that almost every one of your lanes is winning.
Yeah.
And you have had an impact on every single lane here. So, it really shows sort of the power that you can have with not
Twisted
only
Fate,
running, with not only running teleport, but obviously Twisted Fate's global presence.
I mean, a lot of mid laners right now are running that teleport because it really does help a lot having that basically opportunity to return the lane whenever you're being, say, punished or to respond to something in another lane. So it really does help a lot when you're trying to help your team win.
And here we're going to see just sort of another rinse and repeat use of your ultimate. Unfortunately, Elise does go down from the ignite, but it almost seems too easy when we're watching you here, because it seems like a no-brainer, but maybe when you're in a game as, Twisted Fate like me, it doesn't always become that apparent, but your uses for your ultimates and your TPs have, I think, resulted in something every single time. And not that it needs to result in a kill, but even a summoner spell blown or something like that can give a pretty huge advantage to a lane. So I think this is just an incredibly good game to demonstrate how much of a presence you can make on all portions of the map when you're running this sort of global ultimate utility style with a ton of damage now that you're have a good amount of gold in your hand. So I think that's also something to note here, as you dodge pretty much every skill while taking 2 tower shots.
3, yeah. Not my greatest moment, I admit.
But, yeah. So, we're approaching that sort of 17-minute mark, approaching mid-game and sort of setting up for late game. So, let's start talking a little bit about just sort of the Twisted Fate, teleport, and team fight style. Maybe talk to me a little bit about grouping versus splitting, or whether or not your team asks you to group or to try to take a tower, because especially with Lich Bane, right, you do have that tower taking opportunity.
So for the most part here, Garen has been say, very aggressive in the game. He's been doing a lot in other lanes after his tower was taken down. So I'm going to be responding the top for the most part this game. And that's perfectly acceptable because I have teleport as well as my ult to respond to anything happening around the map, which makes it a good idea to send me because I have the tools available to handle the situation, as well as have solo kill pressure onto that Poppy.
Yeah, and we've actually talked about this in a lot of other episodes too, but it's particularly the top lane episode. You know, having the tools necessary to be in a lane that isn't either close to the objective or close to your team is okay, but only when you have those tools. And obviously Twisted Fate, and especially the version that you're running with Teleport and Home Guard, you definitely have the tools to almost be anywhere on the map when those cooldowns are up. So, talk to me a little bit right now here. Your team here is sort of playing do-si-do with them in the mid lane, and they have Lucian in the bot lane. So, talk to me about just, you know, your mentality, what you're thinking about doing here.
So basically, I just responded to the top push, and I pushed it out, and Poppy had to respond to my team pushing mid lane, so I just kept pushing, and I got a lot of free tower damage on that top lane tower for free. It's basically my team applying pressure on the mid lane and then me taking advantage of that in the top lane while they responded to it. So even if they had initiated in the middle lane, I could have responded with my ult, so I was never in a position where I was truly out of place.
Right. And we're gonna see you, I think, yep, TP back in here. Just being everywhere. This just seems so... If I was on the enemy team, I would be very, very mad at you too. I think I would be salty and calling you a scripter because you're just everywhere on the map this game, and it's almost hard to follow you, which can be just so annoying for the other enemy team, and also just makes them think, hey, you know, if I'm alone, or, you know, all these times that they've tried to gank and you end up counter ganking or being there, it just becomes extraordinarily frustrating as you like two-shot that Lucian under tower. But yeah, the mentality, or the mental, oh my gosh, you just get out of everything, but the mental state that it can put on a team too can be extremely detrimental.
I think the most important thing about playing Twisted Fate is you need to be very proactive in your playstyle instead of being reactionary. Because a lot of times you want to set the pace for the team, you want to be the, say, the sole person to like dictate how the game goes. And if you're playing reactionary, it's very difficult as TF to just respond to everything in a proper format.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit more about that too, because this idea versus reactionary versus controlling or proactive, and tying that in with being very communicative with your team, especially as playing TF. Just talk to me a little bit about that.
So if you're in a situation to set things up, then you should always usually take that opportunity, because that means you are initiating a certain aspect. Because if you're playing reactionary as opposed to, say, proactive, you're letting them decide what's going to happen rather than pretty much allowing things to happen the way you want them. So when you play reactionary, they're dictating how the game goes. They'll be rotating around the map, and you'll have to respond to that instead of, say, starting where the stuff fights, where the fight starts. So a lot of time, we'll be initiating most of the fights around the map, and that's what you usually want to do as a proactive team, because it gives the enemy team less opportunities to respond, and they'll have a limited range of options in the game.
And we have seen you play reactionary as well, like that gank bot, coming in to save the day, to get that double kill, to counter gank. But as you were saying, it's much easier to dictate the flow of the game and take opportunities like we're seeing right now to come down, you know, and just easy pickings on that card. This is my favorite part of the entire game right here. Just you dancing around the Karthus Skittles.
Yeah.
But, yeah, this game at this point is definitely looking to be pretty much in your control.
Yeah.
We're gonna see in the next couple of minutes you guys really starting to put the hammer down.
Now, as a note, it's not bad to play reactionary, because usually you have a lot of tools. Like, say, if you're playing with Janna, you're usually going to be playing in the reactionary. The thing about playing reactionary is that you have to outplay, because you're letting them initiate the pace of the game, as opposed to where, when you're being proactive, you're the one who starts everything.
Right.
So just a note. Reactionary isn't bad in certain situations, but as a Twisted Fate, you prefer to be proactive.
Definitely. So, just taking a look again at the pace of the game here. We see you at 9 kills, 2 deaths, 4 assists, 150 CS. Not a very high CS score, really, on anyone this game. Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's due to the fact that you've just been causing a lot of chaos around the map?
No, it's because there really hasn't been a laning phase for the majority of this game. There's been a lot of combat and lanes so far.
Definitely. And we're going to see you guys finally start to group up here and try to take down these inhibitor turrets here. So
with the Lich Bane, we're gonna be the one taking most of the siege tower damage down. Draven is a little bit too immobile in most cases to poke the tower down, but with Lich Bane we can do a large majority of that tower damage. Garen body blocking for us there. The biggest problem about TF is that if you're using your W to hit the tower for the extra damage, you lose the gold card, and you don't have much to say disengage if they decide to engage on you because you're in a bad position. So you'll see me being punished here for using a blue card on the tower and then getting initiated with a wall of pain and then a poppy.
So Wings of Death finally taking his revenge on
no, Karthus actually.
There. Oh, Karthus ended up with a kill. Okay, good.
So basically, trade a kill or two, and then we'll take this mid tower down for free. And we'll pretty much, we've got most of the towers on the map while we've only lost one.
And something to note too is that during that fight, your ultimate had just just come up when you died. Unfortunately, you died, but and your TP is about to be up, I believe, or it is up. So that was an opportunity for you to group because, as you said, as we were talking about earlier, you didn't have the tools to help your team if you were splitting in another lane because your ultimate was down and your teleport was down. However, we will see right now, as you respawn, you do have both those teleports and the teleport and the ultimate available.
I mean, in a position like this, where your team is immensely ahead, you don't really have to be split pushing for the most part, because you are a huge part of the utility that your team has, especially with those gold cards and the CDR that you're running. But the thing is that they can't properly respond to a split push because I'm so incredibly ahead right now. So basically, no matter how we play this game, it's going to work out, but the safer option, of course, is to usually stay grouped and play it methodically and take down objectives.
So we're approaching about the 25-minute mark here, so we're actually going to go ahead and ×2. You ready for that?
Yeah.
Alright, let's do it. So we're going to ×2 through this game, and the reason being is just because we'll slowly see Ziani and his team start to close the game out. And I'll have Ziani sort of talk us through the end of this game here as we see him super speed his way into this. But I would like to say, if you have any questions that you would like answered, now would be the time to start posting them in chat. So please post away, and we'll get to them right after this game ends. Ziani, take it over.
Alright, so we're pretty much initiating brawls at this point. We're taking a lot of opportunities here. We're gonna disengage here after the fight, pick up a kill on a Lucian. We don't actually have the waves pushed in here, so there's not much we can do on the map when it comes to towers per se. So that's the reason I'll teleport top right now and push that lane out for my team, since we do have that Baron. And looks like they'll be engaging on us in the middle lane, and we'll lose a life or two here. And the Karthus all coming in. I am still top, however, and looks like I'm gonna come down, and we're gonna brawl again for the third time in this jungle. Basically pulling out those gold cards and then trading with them here. We'll pick up the kill on the Lee Sin, and then we'll pick up the kill onto that Lucian. No, actually not. And then we'll just basically go back and forth here, picking up those gold cards.
So something to maybe talk about a little bit as you come in here and do some more work with your your ulti there. Just quickly talking about your role as sort of that skirmisher. Sorry, I just I love this card as he finally gets you, but you know, it might be simple, but maybe just talk to me a little bit about your priority in terms of those gold cards in team fights.
So the biggest thing about TF in team fights is that if you're not diving directly under their carry with, say, Zhonya's or anything like that, your pretty much priority is to disengage fights while throwing cards into the backline. So for the most part, you're going to be sticking with your AD carry, or just staying anywhere in particular in the backline, and then throwing gold cards into people trying to engage on your team and then doing lots of damage to them. Because you have a very large amount of AoE as well as CC in your kit, which allows you to punish people for overextending into the front line. Exactly like that Karthus. Yes.
Speaking of which, we do see your zombie is now completed, so we're going to see exactly why that is so beneficial here, making it so hard to kill you, or at least so hard to stop you from at least killing a high priority target.
Well, the ideal for Zhonya's is that you pick it up to prevent getting 100%ed by a lot of like hard AD carries like Fizz or Ahri. And if you pick Zhonya's up, it's usually to dive the back line, because most of the time if you gold card in the back line for your ult, you're going to get punished for that because their entire team's there. But the Zhonya's gives you time for your team to reinitiate with that gold card onto a prime target.
So we're going to see this game starting to close out here in pretty classic solo queue fashion with a little bit of randomness and then finally grouping up to end this game. But yeah, I think this, 16 kills now you picked up, by the way. So just out of curiosity, what were you building last item? I see you picked up a little bit of CDR there.
Well, the reason you normally wouldn't pick up the Finnish Codex, but at this point there's really nothing to buy. So I'm just going to pick up the CDR to finish out the 40% here, because I'm not running the CDR glyphs or anything like that. Now, pretty much you're going to pick up Morellos if you need to deny HB. A lot of Soraka players right now, so Morellos might actually be the best option. Normally I'd say picking up a more AP heavy item or more utility would probably be better, something like theoretically Ludens or the Rylai's.
See, the sun is on the Karthus ult. And trying to whittle this way here. You can see just you coming
Sticking
in
the back with the gold cards, playing it very slow, but punishing everybody. That's usually how the TF should go in the team fights.
Alright. So as this game wraps up, we will start to take it to chat to ask Ziani, the mastermind of Twisted Fate and affecting every lane, everywhere, every second. Let's see, as this game wraps up, what we have in store for chat. We have what a feeder you are with those 2 deaths. However, that was a while ago, and we've down to 5 deaths, so you really are just a feeder, Ziani.
Yeah. Honestly, I should really work on my gameplay so that I can avoid dying that much in a game.
Finally,
Yeah.
the last push here to start.
Garen doing some BM, laughing at the enemy team. The opposite Primal.
So unfortunately, Lollipoppy and Wings of Death do not pick up the victory here, as Ziani ends the game 17-6-11. I would say a pretty outstanding performance on Twisted Fate, and really showing us how to utilize that global map pressure. Let's throw it to chat for some questions. Alright. So currently we have a few questions here. Let's just start with the first one. What was the decision making in bringing TP as your second summoner skill? I know you talked a little bit about this already, but maybe in a more general sense, as you said, more mid laners are picking it up. So if you could maybe describe that as well.
So the decision in taking teleport directly depends on the matchup, or say the composition for your team. A lot of players prefer Ignite for that extra kill pressure in the middle lane, but teleport is used more as a lane stall, I suppose. It gives you amount of pressure on, globally, because that means you can respond to ganks in the bottom or in the top, or just returning to the middle lane to pick up even more CS if you've been pushed out or anything like that. So it's basically more about defending map movements and then assisting your team rather than having that extra kill pressure on your own lane, because it can open up a lot of avenues for your team just by having that. So that's usually why you take teleport. I take it on TF because he benefits more from having it, because he usually has to back a lot because of that mana pool to keep the lane pushed in.
Right.
Sometimes I'll run Ignite during pretty easy lanes where you can punish the enemy very easily. TF has a lot of good damage coming from his E and his Q for the most part, level 2 for 3.
Yeah, and I think another thing too to note is that you really didn't try to solo kill your opponent very much at all during that game. Maybe a little bit in the early game, but you got most of your kills just from those ganks and that pressure that you were able to put on through those global spells. And I think, as well as we've seen sort of in the pro scene, however, it's not as relevant, but mid lane has become a little bit more passive in general. So I think that might be another reason for teleport, becoming a little bit more of a viable spell, and again, especially on Twisted Fate. So good question. All right, let's move on. We have whenever I play Twisted Fate or any other global character, I feel like I always die or improperly use my global. How do I know what to use it on, maybe? Or when to use it, yeah.
So for certain champions like Twisted Fate, a lot of times your ult will be made with a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of shitty ganks in general, let's be real. Not everyone will work out exactly. A lot of AD carries have enough pressure to turn around a 3v2. Things like Draven or Jinx will pretty much usually be able to do that. The biggest thing when you're TF ganking with your global ultimate is being in a position where you know the enemy team can't respond well to it. So for instance, example, if you're ganking bot lane, you should usually only gank when there's no sums available. Or if they just used all their summoner spells or all of their pretty much kit spells to initiate a fight onto your own bot lane. The biggest thing about TFs is that you have that lockdown with your gold card, as well as the split AoE damage. We can also push out waves. So when you're coming in hot, you want to make sure that they don't have any way to possibly escape you, or where they're in a position where they have to fight or they die. So for the most part, you'll want to actually directly focus top lane more than bot lane. Although bot lane usually decides a lot of games, I feel like top lane's very easy to snowball, and they'll be able to pressure the top lane, and then they can use their own teleport to punish people. So it really depends, honestly. Ults can be very, very difficult when you're considering it in the global capacity.
And I think that sort of answers the question of, since TF's ult goes literally anywhere, how do you choose where to ult in a gank? I think that was sort of covered there.
Yeah. So, I mean, to add more onto that question, you usually want to ult to counter gank when your lane is ahead. If you have a 2v2 going on bot lane and their jungler comes up and your bot lane's ahead, if you ult in, turns into a 3v3, and you pretty much clean that fight up pretty easily when they've already used most of their spells to get in on your team. So that's usually how you choose where to ult in a gank. So basically, proper ward control can lead to really easy TF ults. Other than that, you're just relying on knowing the cooldowns and summoners of their spells.
And also, asking your lane opponents as well, and being communicative with your lane opponents, are definitely telling them, hey, if you engage right now, I can teleport down, or I have ult available, right? All right, So let's go on to another question from iResilient, I suppose his name is. What is Twisted Fate's strongest and weakest matchup, and how do you play around each efficiently?
Alright, so TF's hardest matchup is where he's in a position. Okay, so here's where it gets tricky. One of TF's hardest counters is Ahri, but he also counters Ahri because it's a really weird interaction. But basically, TF he struggles versus a lot of champions that can instantly kill him or punish him for pushing the wave, because he pretty much will have to zone himself if he'll get killed like that. And then it's weird because he also has so much global pressure that he can pretty much ignore that weak matchup and make it a strong matchup by pressuring the map. So honestly, I'll say stuff like Diana, Fizz, and Ahri do very well versus Twisted Fate just because they have tools to get onto the Twisted Fate, but they've also got pretty good roaming potential themselves. Twisted Fate, strong matchups, basically anything that's melee and doesn't have as much roaming potential. Because you don't actually need to be winning your lane to provide pressure on the map to win other lanes, but usually you will usually win lanes just by using the gold card pressure onto a melee target and then poking him out with your Q.
All right, hope that answers that question. And yeah, as you said, Twisted Fate's sort of a weird one because he sort of doesn't have to be in lane. He has that opportunity to get out of town, to get out of Dodge. So, all right, let's take another few questions from chat here. It's an interesting one. I think we all might know the answer, but do you think a lot of mid laners will run TP at Worlds?
Honestly, I think it'll depend on how they play it. If they're doing more of a rotational gameplay, I think it's possible to see TP, but only on specific champions. I think a lot of champions don't really benefit from having teleport as much as others, because their kit innately requires them to have that source of teleportation across the map to make up for their mobility or their mana pool. So you'll probably see it on, say, Twisted Fate and Nivea, Diana, or something like Lux. But I don't think you'll see it as often as Ignite because it offers a lot of solo pressure in your own lane.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to this question. It's a good question here. Um, when would you choose to go tier 2 boots before first item instead of something like Chalice or Mana Regen?
So the biggest thing about Twisted Fate is that you normally do not build mana regen because you do not really benefit from it as much whenever you're doing a teleport style build because you're directly pushing them up. Like the weird thing is that your blue card gives you a lot of mana regen in the lane and you'll be picking up pots very often because you have that constant source of getting back and forth from your lane with those boots. The biggest things about going tier 2 boots, like I said earlier in the show, was that you build the CDR boots first item because it gives you a lot of move speed to get in with the gold cards and also lets you push in your lane and build a lot of pressure, which allows you to move around the map for free without the enemy mid lane being able to respond.
So more.
If you're in a position where you have to build Chalice, it's usually going to be something where you can't get close to the wave, so say something like Vel'Koz or maybe Lux. I just think Chalice is a very weak item on TF. I think you benefit from having CDR boots or it's Lichbane or Zhonya's or Luden's first item.
So
because
it's
being
more
able to clear it a
specific to TF then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you can build Chalice. It just really depends on the matchup and if you really need that mana regen. Because if you're in a bad matchup, you might as well be running Teleport just to negate that. So it really just depends on if you want to run Ignite and then just have that mana regen to push through the wave and just stay there.
Makes sense. All right, let's take 3 more questions here, or something like that. So this is kind of generic, but I guess we could go into it. What is usually a good time to start roaming?
Honestly, as soon as you hit 6 or when you hit 9, because that's when you finish maxing your Q, generally the good time to start roaming is basically whenever there's an opportunity to run the map and your lane's pushed up. If you have a very strong enemy bot lane or top lane that's pressuring your top, you can actually, gank early. I think it's very game dependent on when you start roaming, but usually when you have that ult, you want to start pressuring so that you have the window or the opportunity to pressure. It's also very weird. But 6, 9, or whenever you finish maxing W because your stun time correlates with the skill level.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Let's combine these last 2 questions. Or actually, no, we'll do them individually. So I guess this goes on with the previous question. It is tagged on to the previous question. So what if you have a super hard lane? Should you spend most of the time roaming? And then I guess actually the next question after that sort of tags onto that as well.
So TF does have a lot of super hard lanes where you can be very easily punished, but Q really helps negate that because you can just farm from a distance very safely, which may be a reason to pick up Chalice, like somebody mentioned earlier. Whenever you're being zoned out from your wave and you have to constantly be using that Q to farm. If you're in a position where you are zoned out, it may be a good decision to start roaming or getting pressure on the enemy jungle so you can start responding to their movements around the map. Honestly, super hard lanes are especially hard for TF, and then they're also very not. Basically, everything is roundabout for TF. You should spend most of your time roaming if you're basically in a position where you can't do anything in your lane, but you always have that option to just farm your Q and basically wait the game out until you can get a safe ult onto another lane or pick up a free kill somewhere else.
All right, and last question.
Let me add something
Sure.
onto that last one. As Twisted Fate, your goal should be to never die solo in that early laning phase. You want their enemy mid laner to have. So even if he farms up, you don't want the enemy mid laner to have as much pressure as you during the mid-early game. Because you have that much global pressure, you should really avoid dying so that you can properly use your globals to pressure the map while preventing the enemy carry from getting very farmed or fed.
Because, yeah, his early pressure and things like that, too, are a lot of times what end up snowballing the game, I think. So, all right. Last question we're going to ask here. I'm going to open this up to 2 sides, so not only specifically to Twisted Fate, but also just for more, I guess, AP mid laners in general. So, if you are playing from behind, do you want to buy more cost-effective AP items in an attempt to snowball, or a mana regen sustain item for farming your way back into the game or allowing yourself to have mana to do things in fights.
So that's also a little bit more lane dependent. Honestly, cost-effective AP items and attempt to snowball is usually a good idea. Honestly, I'd see that more often on something like Victor or, let's see, Lux, I guess. But most of the time, I think Lux will build, say, Athens or Morello. I think Morello is a really good item in general. I really like it because it has a lot of AP, not as much magic regen, but it does have that health denial, which Soraka really hates in general. Cost-effective AP really allows you to trade early on as opposed to somebody who's building a very large item earlier, but he does spike harder than you normally would. So I think it is a good idea as long as you know the limits of your champion in a certain matchup, and as long as you know that you can use it properly. If you're doing mana regen or sustain items, that basically allows you to farm your way back into the game like you said earlier. But you have less pressure on the map because you don't have as much AP to duel or brawl with somebody who's already beating you.
Alright, guys, I think that's going to do it for Coach's Corner episode 6, where we went over Ziani's Twisted Fate mid lane and controlling the map as well as controlling Wings of Death. We're going to add that to the title. But thanks again, Ziani, for being on the show. Thank God you can hear me.
I'm so glad that you fixed your mic issues. Welcome back.
I'm so glad the early
I
part of that
forgot
show,
to tell you, but you did the whole stream, dude.
That's what people tell me. But before we go, I just wanted to say again, please, if you have any interest, go over to the Summoner School subreddit and or click on the link that's been posted in chat if you have any interest in the fall session for learning fives. Head over there now. As I mentioned, their first stream will be on Thursday at 7 EDT, and following that will be our stream. So don't miss that. Thursday will be an awesome day and an awesome stream. Thanks again, Ziani, for being on the show. And this has been Coach's Corner, where we learn how to stun our opponents on solo queue.
Thank you for watching. Remember to follow, subscribe, Charlie Morris Kappa. Can I get a Kappa 123 in chat, please?
And after we spoke for a while, I knew that we would be riding by being stuck. Turning around, I got you turning around. I've got the safest launch as you come back to the ground. Spinning around, I'm also spinning around. Tell me your favorite way to fly, no one can catch us now. You say you know me, but there's wiser words in the young. I think we've only just begun. And as for the answer, well, I could have no better still. I just wanted you to know. I don't know where I am right now. I struggle to make it, but we got there somehow. You spend the time to get your coat on just right, and I hook it on the door so it can last us the night.